Leader Palace in Yelta, usually a peaceful place that wouldn't get much attention. But on the 4th of February, 1945, it is about to be turned into the host of possibly one of the most questioned moments in history. Although the Second World War had not yet come to an end, as the Japanese and American troops continued to fight, culminating the later bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the situation on the European front was beginning to calm down, as the Germans failed to recover from Stalingrad, being weakened and coming closer to surrendering. It was a result of this failure to recover that brought Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the representatives of the USSR, Britain, and the USA to discuss the re-establishment of the nations in Europe that had been destroyed or conquered by the Germans, and make settlements for the post-war world. President Roosevelt, namely to various of his predecessors, namely Woodrow Wilson, the founder of the League of Nations after the First World War, believed that future wars and conflicts could be avoided through ideas of self-determination for all people, democratic systems, and promotion of political changes through constitutional means as opposed to revolution. Stalin, at the time, sought to establish in the USSR a communist economy that would be ruled by a single working class, and come the 1940s, Stalin was hoping to spread the ideology and seize power in the power vacuum left by the fall of the Third Reich during the final years of the Second World War. Immediately, Stalin having such ambitions alarmed the USA, causing there to be a clear East-West division even before Yalta, with the United Kingdom following a system similar to that of the USA, focusing on glorifying its imperialist empire through trade. The balance of power between the three powers seemed to lay on the side of the USA and Britain in a 2-against-1 conflict. At Yalta, the big three were to put their ideological suspicions and distrust aside, in an attempt to sort out a post-war world settlement. However, Yalta would only serve to highlight divisions between the three superpowers' belief, resulting in a hostile situation that led on to the Cold War. Each of the leaders went to Yalta with a goal. Roosevelt wants the USSR to join the League of Nations. As well as that, he wants to secure alliance with Stalin in the Pacific War to defeat the Japanese. Churchill wants to ensure that all adjustments made to the post-war world would not affect the British Empire, and he would do almost anything to protect it from the Germans that it feared so much. Stalin wants to obtain more land and strengthen conquests, focusing essentially on filling with socialism the power vacuum as a result of the fall of the Third Reich. With opposing ideologies, and in many cases clashing elements in their agendas, from Yalta there arose many hostilities. For instance, Churchill from the beginning had a clear issue with Stalin. Churchill stated that the Soviet Union has become a danger to the free world. A front must be created against her onward sweep. This front should be as far east as possible. A settlement must be reached on all major issues between West and East in Europe before the armies of democracy melt. This was a letter from Churchill to Roosevelt. The biggest tension was between Churchill and Stalin when the situation of Poland was brought up. He explained that he needed Poland for security, and that most attacks in the past came through Poland. Churchill did not like this idea, as he just saw it as an expansion of socialism and an excuse for the USSR to expand. However, Churchill feels that he owes Stalin for weakening the German forces at Stalingrad in the winter of 1942. By the end of Yalta, Churchill writes to Roosevelt, granting concessions in Poland. He said, "I hate socialism, so do you, but I need to cross this bridge." This is where Churchill confesses both his and Roosevelt's hatred for socialism, and this is one of the first causes we see for the Cold War. Another reason that Churchill gave Stalin Poland was due to the Greek Civil War between communists and royalists. Churchill thought that if he gave Poland over to Stalin, then he might not get involved by helping the communists in Greece. If this were to happen, there would be a major threat to the British conquests in the Mediterranean. He would therefore rather give Stalin Poland than allow a potential threat to grow. Roosevelt gives the impression that he is more complacent towards Stalin and tries to get along with him so that Roosevelt can use him as an ally against the Japanese in the ongoing Pacific War of World War II. This act shows that Roosevelt is trying to make things work and not trying to cause a war. However, Roosevelt was clearly not in favour of socialism and was particularly aware of this fact, that if Stalin was granted Poland, he'd have an easier access to filling the power vacuum in Germany and other weaker parts of Eastern Europe with socialism. Roosevelt feared this would be a threat to the USA, a capitalist superpower. Throughout the whole Yelta conference, Stalin could be perceived as being quite aggressive and ambitious, seen particularly through what he said to his ministers during the conference. Only under the reign of socialism can peace be fully established. However, his aggressiveness at Yalta could not be exaggerated. From his reassurance to Roosevelt and Churchill that they should not fear an integral communist uprising in Eastern Europe, he told them that enforcing communist regimes on people was a difficult task, and that the USSR had domestic problems to deal with, such as the economic crisis that the war had left them in. Yet, here we can see that Stalin is being quite peaceful, exposing a more compassionate and caring side of his ultimately aggressive personality. He showed that he was willing to cooperate, but the question of Poland being granted to him, he made sure was almost non-negotiable. I am greatly disturbed that the three great superpowers do not have a meeting of minds about the political setup in Poland. Surely there is a way to reconcile our differences. Here you can see that Stalin is trying to put their differences behind, just so that he can get Poland and expand his beliefs. Even before the Yalta Conference started, there was already a division shown, with the USSR to one side and Britain and USA to the other. It was a 2-against-1 fight against communism. The balance of power was pointed towards the capitalist side. It was quite clear that this was not the start of the Cold War, but signs of it were present even before. However, the Yalta Conference evidently highlighted the issues. As the thoughts and opinions of the leaders were voiced, this making the tensions and hostilities even greater than before, and making the Cold War more likely. Churchill and Stalin had particular hostilities, but Churchill still allowed Poland to be granted to Stalin in the end. Roosevelt and Stalin appeared more complacent because of Roosevelt's desire to get an ally against the Japanese, but he is still wary of Stalin being granted Poland. Churchill and Roosevelt are both scared of Stalin's expansionist ambitions. They made it clear all along that they did not like socialism, communism, but they also owe it to Stalin after weakening the Germans at Stalingrad and have their own goals to settle. So, because the two politicians did not stand up to Stalin, this allowed him to get Poland, which would only increase their fear, distrust, and suspicion. This meant that the issue of ideological clash was never really sorted, and Stalin got what he wanted. Ultimately, the settlement of Poland enabled a full-scale Cold War to begin. You can also see the different types of rulers these men are. Roosevelt and Churchill are both dressed formally for a debating occasion, whereas Stalin is in military uniform, showing that he rules with an iron fist and military might more than peace.